reel it back in this game, being a little bit more cautious and to see maybe if his corners can hold up is kind of like a teaching moment 1 week before the really big one against Illinois. Ethan, your thoughts, and then over to Crash.
I think it's the same strategy this week as it was last week. I think, it worked last week against Ryan Brown and Purdue. I feel like Ryan Brown has kind of had the better season than Aiden Childs personally. I would kind of disagree with Crash on that one just because in like most traditional passing categories, Ryan Brown's been better. I think, Aiden Childs certainly has a lot of potential. He was a, highly touted recruit coming out of high school in Southern California. I'll mention because he went to Downey, but I just think that right now Ryan Brown has proven more this year and kind of been better. And I also just think that like Barry Odom's play calling style seems better suited for pass plays and quarterbacks throwing the ball, whereas Jonathan Smith is not the most traditional offensive play caller I've ever seen in my life. So I feel like he is going to want to establish the ground game a lot more and also get creative with the quarterback running the ball and all that kind of stuff. I think the strategy is the same, and I think especially because we've talked about like Aiden Childs has evidently had some issues getting rid of the ball this year if he's been sacked 8 times. So I just think, and like I said, he's not as great of a passer as Ryan Brown. So knowing those two things, I think you, at least at the beginning of the game, you make him beat you with his legs. If he beats you with his legs in the beginning of the game and, some of that potential starts to come out that we talked about with his dual threat ability, then you adjust and you say, okay, we obviously can't do this anymore. But I think just because he's still a pretty young guy, he isn't quite as settled in the passing game. In the past, he's been mistake prone. This year so far hasn't been super mistake prone, but again, the defenses he's played, So I just think you attack him early. If he stays poised and if he, uses his legs to get out of the pocket, then you adjust. But I think early this strategy shouldn't change, especially since it worked so well last week.